Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rebirth of Ukraine Trade Mission, and welcome to the Organization of American States. To begin our program, I would like to invite Sofisa to come forward and to be able to play the national anthem. And as she does, I would ask you that you stand. Bravo! There's nothing quite like starting off an event of this kind involving Ukraine than to be able to hear such a stirring rendition of the national anthem. But thank you all so much for being here. I'd like really to begin by sharing with you what has finally been revealed. We were hoping very much, in fact, to have President Biden with us. There's so much going on, so to speak, the world is on fire. But President Zelensky, as you may know, is currently in New York City. And it was revealed this morning as to what the details are of the plan that we've all been talking about with regards to the security of Ukraine into the end of this term. We, of course, are in the midst of our own elections, presidential elections, as you know. But there are four specific points that he is making in this plan, and he is going to be rolling his sleeves up and talking with President Biden. And honestly, I'm looking forward to being able to have the president actually share his words to this group that will come to you on another day. Again, I think that there was great regret that he was not able to be with us. But the top priorities right now for the president of Ukraine is, number one, to be able to deal with the task at hand with regards to having a relationship, a mutual defense pact with NATO immediately. Second, to continue Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region to provide a territorial bargaining chip. Number three is a request for specific advanced weapons. And fourth, and the reason why we are all here, and that is international financial aid for Ukraine's shattered economy. If I'm speaking too fast, please do raise your hand, and I'll certainly slow down. And so we have today are dealing with a very unique situation that we have not experienced, quite frankly, since World War II. I come at this from an incredible journey. I served as U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and in that role I was responsible for overseeing U.S. industry at home and abroad. Everything from taxes to trade development, sat on the boards of the U.S. Export-Import Bank, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. And finally, I was asked, we didn't know at the time that it would be the last agreement, but would I please head up a team of Americans to negotiate what turned out to be the last trade and economic agreement with the Soviet Union. And so the Secretary of Commerce, who was a very good friend, almost like a second father to me, asked me, he said, you know, I would love it if the two of us could go over and sit with the Soviet ambassador in his residence. We've just been invited to go over there, and I would rather have no one but you be with me. So we went over and we sat with him, and the secretary, unbeknownst to me, announced that he wanted to show as the relationship between the United States and the Soviet Union at that time. In mind, Mikhail Gorbachev was in power. I can remember sitting with him in his office in the Kremlin. And so he said, Jim, I think it'd be a great idea if we could take a couple of saplings, small trees, with us to Moscow, and to be able to plant them as a symbol of the relationship between our two countries and our two peoples. And he said, I think we can do that, don't you? Well, I wasn't going to say no to the Secretary of Commerce, but I thought, how do you get trees from Washington, D.C. all the way to Moscow? And so we had to deal with the Agriculture Department, the regulations that were involved with all of this. And so finally we went to Moscow. I negotiated the agreement. It was fairly intense. I was set up unsuccessfully by the KGB. At that time, of course, Vladimir Putin was an agent of the KGB in St. Petersburg. And so we planted it, and there was a big ceremony, bands playing, words being spoken. It was really rather extraordinary. And so we came back, and lots of photos were taken. It hit the global media. And so finally, when the Russian invasion took place, I asked a friend of mine in Moscow to please go and see what those trees looked like. I hadn't checked on them for a while. And so he came back on the phone with me the next day. He said, you'll never guess what? They're dead. The trees that had been planted to show the great relationship between the Soviet Union and the United States, they now are dead. And it seemed to be very symbolic, given what had just transpired between Russia and the United States. But at that same, I must tell a rather funny story. I sat next to the trade minister at this extraordinary dinner that was held in the Kremlin. It had to have been 1,000, 1,500 people. And the trade minister, I realized, was constantly verbally attacking the military of the Soviet Union. And he said, you know what we just heard? But there was a general who was very strict, very stern, not very bright, had his assistant to write a speech that he could deliver. And he looked at his assistant, he said, I want you to be able to write a speech for me, 15 minutes, and I don't want an extra minute, 15 minutes only. And so the aide went off, wrote the speech, gave it to him just before he was to deliver it, and the general delivered the speech, and it was 30 minutes long. And so afterwards, the general was furious. He was livid. And so he got his aide and he said to him, I told you to give me a speech for 15 minutes, not a minute more, and you gave me a speech that's 30 minutes. And he said, but I did, I just gave you an extra copy. Well, it not only was a funny story, but it was certainly reflecting on the respect that the very senior people of Gorbachev's government had for the military. But indeed, what we're doing today is extremely important. Let me stress the fact that what we are doing here is not think tank stuff. I'm so grateful, particularly to CSIS, to the Atlantic, to other organizations here in Washington that really have helped to lead people to think as to how we deal with the future. But what you are doing here, what we are doing here together, is to be able to anticipate the future of Ukraine. What we're trying to do is to be able to anticipate what the needs are so that when this war, this ugly war, finally comes to an end, and it will, that we are prepared, that we are business ready, that we are going to be working from the ground up when it comes to what the future of the Ukraine should look like. And so, you know, I so often think to myself of the words of my old boss, that was Ronald Reagan, who used to talk about morning in America. And what I look forward to is the day when we can talk about the fact that it's morning in Ukraine, that we have gotten through these dark hours, and that together we are anticipating a brand new country, a new Ukraine, a new rebirth of Ukraine. And so if I may right now, I'm going to proceed with a little bit of background of what we will be undertaking. There are several things that are going to come out of this particular trade mission, and your presence means everything. We're going to see that this entire program is broadcast or will be available on the internet so that you can show your friends and your colleagues back in Ukraine. But we will, first of all, hear some words from former Secretary of Commerce Penny Pritzker, who unfortunately couldn't be with us, but she wanted to make sure that she had some words to be able to share with everyone, and we'll hear her in just a couple of minutes. She is the former Secretary of Commerce, as I say, headed up was the special diplomat on behalf of the entire Biden administration on focusing on the future economy of Ukraine. Her brother is currently the governor of Illinois, and their father started Hyatt Hotels. We then are going to have the chance to hear from Irina Polyevsky, and I'm going to apologize for mispronouncing names, who is the acting CEO and president of the U.S. Business Council, Ukraine Business Council. I'm looking very, very much to her remarks. We then are going to have Glyn Gozar-Charney, and she will be talking to us on behalf of APCO. APCO is one of the world's largest strategic community companies and is very much involved in Ukraine. They opened up an office in Kyiv, and she'll be sharing a bit of that with us. I'm really looking forward to the gathering of several individuals who bring a lot to the table in dealing with the future of Ukraine. I want to stress that every breath that is taken here today is going to have some element of dealing with ethics, integrity, transparency, and accountability. If the mayors of Ukraine, if the business leaders of Ukraine are not sensitized to the notion that ethics means everything for Western businesses in being able to invest and set up commercial operations in Ukraine, you will have wasted your time in coming to Washington and trying to figure out how indeed you can be involved with bringing investment into your company, into your municipality. And so I'll be introducing them in a little bit. We then are going to have with us the International Vice President of Chemonics, and I'm very grateful to Chemonics for hosting us tomorrow for a hands-on business-to-business session. We then are going to have the CEO of BDO Ukraine, and I at one time was responsible for overseeing with a team of individuals what we called the Invest in USA program. And every year we would publish a manual that would discuss how foreigners might want to consider investing in the United States. And so I'm pleased that as a result of what we're going to be doing here today and tomorrow, that BDO and the Washington Institute and the Mayor's Club and other organizations that we're associated with are going to be producing a manual to be able to convince Western businesses that they should absorb themselves in the future of Ukraine economically. And so we will be hearing from the individual who essentially heads up BDO in Ukraine. Then we're going to have a fireside chat. I'm delighted that a recent friend, Les Myers, who has both his law degree and his PhD, will be having a fireside chat with the Honorable Olga Baleko, who is judge of the Grand Chamber of Supreme Court. She has a doctorate in philosophy, and she is very sensitized to how important ethics is in the future of Ukraine. We then will have a chance to be able to hear Sophia again after lunch in a brief concert. We're also going to be able to have Henry Sterenberg, who will be talking about all the organizations that he's involved with, as well as having some of you speak. We're going to have the president of the Silicon Valley, Harbir Bhatia, the Silicon Valley Central Chamber of Commerce. Having chambers of commerce involved in what we're doing and trying to be able to produce the new vital Ukraine is so very, very key. Then we're going to have a special treat in being able to have several mayors join us, as well as Sister Cities International, in being able to sign an agreement in which the United States is going to commit itself to being able to literally roll up sleeves and see how we can put together individual relationships between cities. We will have with us the Major General, Army Retired, discussing technology as well as the current state of affairs in Ukraine. We're going to have the Vice Chairman of BlackRock. As you know, BlackRock, which holds a portfolio of $10 trillion, that's with a T. Very much, we were working to have him come to Washington, and then he had to go off to Brussels. But he has a message for us, and he recorded it. I have not even seen it yet, and looking forward to that. We're going to be talking about capital for Ukraine and financing, having helped to launch the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as well as before that, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency at the World Bank. I'm all too familiar with how important financing is. Then, truly a treat for us, we'll be having a couple of veterans from the war with us to be able to share some of their thoughts into the future. It's not going to be so much looking backwards as it is forward in the future of Ukraine. And then finally, Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur, who is extremely associated with Ukraine and its future, who represents the state of Indiana, specifically Gary, Indiana, has been involved with Ukraine for quite some time. And no one has been stronger, firmer in the need for American and Western support of Ukraine. She and I debated many years ago on both CNN and CNBC on trade, and I haven't seen her since those days, and I'm looking forward to seeing her again today. Let me just finally end by saying that there are several people and individuals and organizations that I want to thank for having made this possible. First, in the very top of the list, is Henry Stettenberg, who is with us and will be talking to us a couple of times today. Yulia Shuvistova, Anastasia Flania. Want to thank the wonderful Georgetown crew. I taught at Georgetown for almost 20 years, and I'm delighted that we have organization, professionals in Russian, Eastern European, and Eurasian affairs. And they're with us, and you probably have already encountered them at the entrance. I'd like to be able to thank Javier Lau, as well as Aida Rota, who have made this possible here at the OAS for us today. And then finally, the organizations such as the Mayor's Club, Economy of Trust Ukraine, and the Economy of Trust itself, UMIDA, Destination Ukraine, and Comonix, of course, who will host us tomorrow. And so that gives you a bird's eye view of what we're going to hear. And now what I'd like to do is to be able to have you all listen to the words of Penny Pritzker. Thank you.
Planning an event like this, and I understand many of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to speak to you at the Washington Institute's Rebirth of Ukraine trade mission. I know how much work goes into planning an event like this, and I understand many of you, mayors, business executives, veterans, and nonprofit leaders have traveled many hours to get here for this important gathering. Thank you for showing up. The focus of this event on connecting American and Ukrainian business and government leaders to get real things done is critical. And the central role of Ukraine's local leaders cannot be overstated. Your leadership on the ground is what will drive Ukraine's recovery and future success. Serving as special representative for Ukraine's economic recovery was an honor. And while I was only allowed by our Congress to serve in the role for 1 year, I am proud of what we, in partnership with Ukrainians and our allies, were able to accomplish. Together, we helped keep Ukraine's economy going, tackle corruption, and increase private sector engagement. And that work is ongoing. Even as Putin continues his brutal war of aggression and brave Ukrainians continue to fight for sovereignty and freedom, Ukraine continues down the path to realizing its economic future. Security is a precondition for economic recovery. But in addition to security, Ukraine must implement a cross-ministerial planning capacity to develop a single prioritized project pipeline. It must broaden the bench of shovel-ready projects that are critical to economic recovery. It must continue to relentlessly pursue reforms. It must marshal more capital and private sector investment into the country, and it must get its people safely back home and back to work. During my time as special representative, I made 6 trips to Ukraine. During those visits, I not only saw the unbelievable potential of Ukraine's economic future, but I witnessed firsthand how Ukraine is realizing that potential now. I see it in the defense sector. Ukraine's defense industrial base has grown 6-fold in the past year and 18-fold since February 2022. This growth is driven by Ukraine's current war needs. But once the war ends, Ukraine will have one of the most modern, competitive defense industrial bases in Europe, capable of taking global market share from Russia and supplying allies with NATO standard munitions and equipment. I see it across Ukraine's technology and startup ecosystem. Just this summer, one of Ukraine's tech startups, Creatio, gained unicorn status with a $1.2 billion valuation. And I see it in Ukraine's retail industry, where Ukrainian discount chain Aurora is expanding rapidly, opening more than one new store a day, and now expanding into the EU, starting with Romania. My belief in Ukraine's future is grounded in these stories and trend lines, and I am not alone. The private sector, both American and international, has confidence in Ukraine's economic resilience, potential, and long-term prospects, even despite Putin's brutal attacks. And the democratic world, led by the United States, is rallying around Ukraine militarily, economically, and diplomatically. We know that Ukraine must win this war. But Ukraine's future rests not only on winning the war, but also on rebuilding a modern, Western-facing economy. That reconstruction and recovery effort must be community-driven, with local leaders and mayors at the forefront. You in this room are the ones who understand the unique needs and strengths of your communities. The great news is that you are doing just that. You are leading. Already, 750 projects have been submitted on the DREAM platform for development, showcasing the proactive steps being taken at the local level. Your leadership is crucial in ensuring these projects are prioritized and executed effectively, forming the building blocks of a strong economic recovery plan for Ukraine. Your efforts are supercharging Ukraine's journey to becoming the prosperous, democratic, independent country integrated into the EU and NATO that its people want and have been fighting for. It is your leadership that will make Ukraine's future a reality. That's what this event is all about. Thank you for the invitation to join you. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Jim. Ooh, this is loud. Thank you, everybody. It's great to be here. And first and foremost, before I start and present to you our vision and everything we are planning to do and execute in Ukraine, I want to first and foremost thank Jim Moore for everything you've done to make this happen. And for 4 months, you've been on the phone daily, emails, Penny Pritzker and many others. So thank you, Jim, and everybody. Please give Jim the applause. Thank you so much. So today, as Jim pointed out, as Ms. Pritzker pointed out, it is only a first step in something that we've been working for many, many years. Can I have my presentation, please? So today, I'm about to share with you our vision, and the vision that is now really taking hold across the world. As you know, this is our third trade mission, and part of what we're doing, the trade missions, is to make sure that every government around the world understands the opportunity that Ukraine presents to their own countries. So today I'm about to share that vision with you, and I need a presentation to show up so we can start. Great. So first and foremost, as you see what we're all about, all for Ukraine, for all of Ukraine. Our goal is to make sure that we build Ukraine under what we are called economy of trust. We want Ukraine to be known as a country to be trusted. The country can be trusted. The country where we can do business and big business. And I believe today I will be able to share with you exactly how that business can be done in Ukraine. This is not what you're about to see, is not just an idea, it's not a concept. It's what we're executing already today. So next slide, please. So first and foremost, let's address the biggest problem we're facing. Right now, which is not being talked a lot about, we are transitioning from centrally planned economy that has been part of Ukraine, Soviet Union for over 100 years, since 1917. And what we need to get to, we need to get to the market economy. And decentralization is what allows us to do that, because decentralization allows us to build economies bottom up. And this is what we're after. Next slide, please. So right now, guys, next slide, please. Can I have a clicker? Anybody has a clicker? Thank you. So if you understand this very simple and very important concept, municipalities as institutions in Ukraine do not have the knowledge, do not have the resources, do not have the ability to network and execute market economy at their local level. And that's the biggest problem we are aiming to solve. Here you see that all of this on the slide is everything our organization and many companies that we work with providing to municipalities at no cost, in order for the municipalities as an institution to be able to work on all levels of international community. And that is what we have to build in order to facilitate almost $1 trillion coming to our country. Next slide, please. So now let's talk about elephant in the room. Now, if you think about this, what corruption is what Ukraine, unfortunately, is known for. And what we have right now is a tipping point where we can change the culture, the actual culture of Ukrainian business. There's, among all the things you know, education is the key. We are starting with education by certifying and our mayors and administration members in anti-corruption. We want them to sign ethics memorandum, understanding what ethics are. We want everybody, all the mayors, to actually show that to everybody they will work with. Second, digitalization. Technology will drive corruption out by itself, right? And then we're coming back to the biggest one of all, decentralization. Decentralization was really going to drive the corruption out of the system over time. So next slide, please. So now as we're getting into understand the, oh, thank you very much. That's going to be much easier. Where do I point, Nastya? Okay, well, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Oh, it does. Did I turn it? All right, so this is all about us. All about things that we need to do. If we talk about investment, corporate, grant investment, any of that government money, private money, doesn't matter. The key is to mitigation of risks. And if you look at all of them, you're aware of all of those risks. But decentralization is not just a risk. Decentralization is an opportunity. And the reason it's a risk is because think about what our mayors, municipalities, are now have macro level. First, they generally speaking do not trust their central government. They will never give up their independence they recently gained. Third, they're sitting on the vast physical resources. I call Rhode Island size resources. Fourth, their future as a municipality depends on one thing and one thing only, creation of local jobs. Fifth, where we come in as a community, right? We need to give them the resources to execute all of that. And this is why I was in our Mayor's Club organization. We already host over 630 mayors today, and we're adding more every day. Because building the municipal network allows us to execute nationwide. As you'll see in a second, more and more detail. So coming back is just a comparison of the opportunity size. Nobody talks about the opportunity size. This is state of Texas. More or less a similar size as the Ukraine. And look at the GDP. 20x is the opportunity we can generate in Ukraine. And believe me, Ukraine has way more natural resources than Texas with all its oil. Because Ukraine has every element in Mendeleev table in the ground. But we don't want to just sell commodity. We want to be able to do the value add in Ukraine. And that's what we're after. We're after that particular thing. We want you to understand that our organization represents the whole country, not an individual project. We have a lot of those individual projects, you'll see them in a second. But what we are representing is the whole country. Think about 95% of the country has not been developed before the war, or obviously war has even damaged more. And it gives us an opportunity to do what? To create smart cities ground up. Because in Ukraine, we have one advantage, which I'm going to address in 1 second. But part of what we're doing now, we are putting together municipalities in what we call economic unions. And as you'll see our numbers, we already have 22 economic unions, which allows us to basically build a foundation for future smart city. Why Ukraine so unique in this regard? Think about, we are decoupling North America from China, right? Europe does the same thing. Ukraine is going to be the heart of a smart manufacturing because of its location, because of how much money already been poured into Ukraine. I want to address one thing. I was speaking actually not too far away from here, but here last April, right? There was a conference of smart companies, Amazon, Microsoft, great companies. And everybody on that stage said one thing: we can make this building, a gorgeous building, smarter, but we cannot make it smart. When I got on the stage, I was pretty quick on my feet. I said, look, in Ukraine we have every other problem, but we don't have this problem. We do not have a legacy infrastructure problem in Ukraine. We can bring all of the smart technologies and have them work in its fullest. But not only just by themselves, they can be integrated with other smart technologies. Ukraine can be the showcase for the world of how smart technology can be not only sustainable, but efficient, based on one thing and one thing only. Are we improving quality of life for every citizen or not? And if the answer is yeah, we go forward. But technology, look at this layer at the bottom. The bottom layer is a technology layer. Why? Because technology layer at the bottom of this whole stack allows us to drive transparency across every activity we have. From cup of coffee we are buying, make sure that the local store pays the taxes, all the way down to building $100 million building. So moving on, if you look to the next side of this story, I'm trying to switch, thank you. So this is our business model, and this took us a long time to get there. We have a very large global network, and it's getting larger and larger already. And I'm a president of World Trade Center Kyiv. That's just the World Trade Center. We have 318 World Trade Centers around the world, and we're actually putting together, now we're starting to put together a coalition alliance of World Trade Centers within World Trade Center Association. But the key to our success and the ability to execute now is the middle layer. Ukraine does not have what we know in the developed world, a commerce department. What we have come up with is we are setting up a very business units with its own P&L that do very specific functions. And in aggregate, they are actually now a commerce department for the whole country. Then at the last layer, you'll see companies that we select from all around the world. We have many of them now, which allows us now to bring them all across Ukraine. You'll hear a very detailed presentation later on with Sweka, a $2.2 billion giant. We want to bring all the American companies through this model because I want everybody to realize that the money that will come to Ukraine, with the exception of humanitarian, macro financing, as well as military, will not go directly to Ukraine. They will go directly to the companies, American, Canadian, German, Dutch, French, and who would need to find a local partner to work with in Ukraine. So what we come up with is another very critical thing, is we call it Tower of Trust. The Tower of Trust allows us to bring companies step by step, because Ukraine is acquired taste. It's not easy to do business in Ukraine. The culture gap is big, is very big. Our job is to integrate, to close this gap, to make sure the process allows us to save time and millions of dollars to enter the market. And we are doing this now. We have one of our key projects that exceeded all expectations with one of the Dutch companies that are already being financed by Dutch government. United States government has $1.57 billion available already for Ukraine now, and nothing has been distributed yet. Why? And the reason is because there's two questions: companies and governments, and please, as Jim pointed out, now the governments are already competing for our country. Governments. And our job is to give them opportunity to come, bring capital, technology, management, know-how to Ukraine. The next slide you'll see is a slide that allows us to understand the future. Today, there's a lot of industrial park, 73 registered, even that a very small number. But that industrial base only has 8 parks that are operating today. And as you'll see, one of our biggest projects for the country that is becoming public now allows us to really build the future and think about the future. Economy of Trust is an American company with the daughter in Ukraine. We will be the largest operators, managers, and hopefully owners of industrial parks in Ukraine. How do we do that? You'll hear much more detail in about an hour and a half, but let me give you an idea. For every economic union, there will be at least 5 industrial parks that are industries generating for next 20 years for that community. We would be able to work with municipalities to sign 49-year leases on that municipal land, creating public-private partnerships, and bringing different residents with different technologies to build industrial clusters in every one of them, creating local jobs, right? This is projects that are already underway and are being in the process of being financed now. All of them ready to go in Ukraine. But the key is not specific projects you see on the screen. The key is the selection criteria. Look at the selection criteria. That's the key. It allows us to start small, do an MVP in one community, one municipality, and then very quickly scale it across the country, across Ukraine. In order to do this, we need to standardize a lot of things. Legal documents, financial processes, project preparation. All of those things need to be standardized for ease of use, and the standards, not the Ukrainian standards, but the world standards. So now, as you see this going through, I want to point out to you on the next slide, let me give you understanding of the size of scale and opportunity. This is the biggest project of Ukraine. We are planning to build the first smart city in Ukraine, and you see this sketches, the ideas. This is Lviv region. This is next to, between Lviv and the Polish border, city Horodok. Now, as you see here, I want to point out to you, it's a big vision. It's a very big vision. We're talking about, tens of billions, maybe, I don't know, maybe into $100 billion opportunity, but we're starting with one. We're starting with 700-hectare industrial park on the bottom screen, 700 hectare. That park will have 23 industrial clusters. 23. All of the documentation, architecture, engineering, all of those clusters will be available for free for the rest of the country. Why? Because we don't want to waste time. We don't want to waste money of the municipalities. We want to make sure that investors and residents come in who can immediately create jobs. The 20 hectares that we're starting with is already received government funding from Finland with SWECO. You're about to hear that again a little bit later today. This is already happening now. This project is already underway. There's no time to wait. Because think about when the war is over, which hopefully will be very soon, think about all the flood that's going to come into Ukraine. If we want to be ready to receive the capital, the expertise, the knowledge, and today we're not. We're starting it now. That's why all of you here, all of the mayors, everyone who's here allows us to demonstrate to people in America a very high level that you, the mayors, the local business leaders, are the ones who are eager to bring them into Ukraine and willing to do the right thing. So, coming back to finish it up, nobody talks about at any level that public-private partnerships, the political, financial, economic instrument that develop everybody from America to China, is what Ukraine is going to drive its recovery with. There's no better instrument to assist Ukrainians' recovery in all projects. There's no better instrument to reduce risks for everyone than this particular instrument. And today, Mayor's Club, as well as many organizations that are working with us already, will be the top expert in Ukraine on execution of public-private partnerships across industries. Across industries. And last, I want to finish up with this. We all know, right? We have our great defenders who defend our freedom. All of us are living in the historic times. History is being unfolded in front of our eyes. Last 2.5 years, the world has changed. And we all sitting here today. For me, this journey started 10 years ago, after Crimea. I was here in the State Department 10 years ago, last August. And I basically told them the story, the vision to build a platform to connect Ukraine and the world. Today, we have an opportunity, all of us, to actually influence the historic events that are about to unfold now, already unfolding. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to be here with you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to be able to introduce Irina. We have just met recently, but I have to respect her greatly for the work that she's doing on behalf of the USU Ukraine Business. Irina.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and dear Ukrainian guests. It gives me a great pleasure to welcome the trade mission Rebirth of Ukraine on behalf of the US-Ukraine Business Council, also is known as USUBC. USUBC is the largest business association centered on Ukraine and headquartered outside of Ukraine. We are headquartered here in Washington, D.C., and we have 230 members. My name is Irina Paliashvili, and I'm the acting president of the USUBC Business Council. Let me please first thank the organizers, everyone who contributed to the success of this trade mission, and in particular the Mayor's Club and Honorable James Moore Jr., founder and CEO of the Washington Institute for Business, Government, and Society. The 33 years of renewed Ukraine's independence have been packed with tectonic, geopolitical, economic, and other developments, as well as the full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine, which all brought Ukraine into the global focus. USUBC community, all our members, stand with Ukraine in its fight for freedom, independence, democracy, justice, and dignity, the sacred values which are shared by American and Ukrainian nations. As we acknowledge the tremendous progress that Ukraine has achieved in nation building, in democracy, in building the market economy, we would like to highlight among the key driving forces of this progress just the two driving forces. First is business, and second is local communities. Let me please start with the role of business and private sector, because USUBC is a business association. Our members mainly are investors who are doing business in Ukraine, paying taxes, creating jobs, modernizing the economy, but also taking their social responsibility very seriously and making enormous contributions to the war relief humanitarian efforts. Since 1995, that's when our business association was created here in Washington, D.C., USUBC has been promoting and advancing relations between Ukraine and the United States. USUBC members are the leading American and Ukrainian companies representing all sectors of the economy. The primary activities of USUBC as a business association include promoting the development of bilateral trade and economic relations through regular interactions between business and political leaders in the US and Ukraine, and supporting initiatives to improve investment climate in Ukraine, to affirm the rule of law, to enhance competition, and to increase the transparency of business procedures. Our members have been reliable partners to Ukrainian public and private entities. Our current goals are to support Ukraine through to victory in the war and to support the recovery of the country through the increased trade and investment. We at USUBC and also our members are always thinking what can be done to enhance the investment climate of Ukraine, to boost the economy during the wartime, but also preparing for the rebuilding of Ukraine's stage. Ukraine's imminent accession to the European Union and harmonization of Ukrainian legislation with this of the European Union are accelerating the reforms. As US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen recently stated, our direct budget support for Ukraine continues to depend on reforms that will further strengthen the stability of Ukraine's economy and improve governance. USUBC members are focusing on such reforms as deregulation, privatization. One reform that is very dear to my heart because I'm a lawyer by background, it's rule of law and judiciary reform, as well as taxation, customs, transparency, and digitalization of public services, and of course, decentralization. Let me please highlight here one of the most important reforms for our Ukrainian guests and also for our USUBC members, which is decentralization and the role of local communities as a key driving force of Ukrainian progress. The role which proved to be even more crucial during the wartime and will be equally crucial during the rebuilding of Ukraine. USUBC members work in many regions of Ukraine, and they want to make sure that their efforts and their aspirations and their investments are welcomed and appreciated by the local communities, that the local mayors and the local authorities undertake their best efforts to ensure attractive investment climate, transparent and fair treatment, protection of property rights, and other legitimate rights of investors. Our members always put an emphasis of what Jim said in his opening remarks on integrity and ethics in the economic climate. Ukraine's regions compete for investments, and the bad news is that the bad news travel fast. So any news about unethical behavior, unfair treatment, corruption, raidership against investors on the ground travel very fast. And this news immediately undermines the attractiveness of the specific region, which means for the region a decrease in taxes, loss of jobs, and reputational damage that takes long time and effort to repair. We know how much efforts are undertaken by various Ukrainian and international organizations, including this trade mission, to enhance the decentralization reform, to empower local communities, and to foster entrepreneurship and innovation at the local level. These issues are discussed at numerous international conferences, including at the annual Ukraine Recovery Conference, which this year was in Berlin in June and next year will be in Rome. Ukrainian mayors are invited to participate in the world's top recovery and development events and programs. We know, for example, that this Mayors Club traveled with successful trade missions to Japan and Netherlands. We also know that several Ukrainian mayors have been participating in the International Mayor Summit programs, Act Now Mayors Conference in Brussels, and in Ukraine House in Davos, within the framework of the World Economic Forum. There have been also excellent conferences held in Ukraine, for example, Ukrainian Urban Forum. I would like to separately mention the programs on empowering women entrepreneurs in local communities. Let me please list here 3 categories of such projects which USUBC, our association, is proud to support. The first is the ongoing project on supporting Ukrainian women through trade webinar series and business accelerator. In spring 2023, the US Department of Commerce, International Trade Administration, led a project on developing and conducting a series of webinars called Empower Her, supporting Ukrainian women through trade. The goal of the webinars was to empower Ukrainian women entrepreneurs with the knowledge and information to allow them to develop partnerships in the United States to grow their businesses. Over 200 female business entrepreneurs joined each webinar and expressed interest to participate in follow-up activities. As a follow-up, a concept of a business accelerator program was developed to offer an impactful and measurable combination of e-commerce workshops, shipping, and logistical support. The second ongoing project is mentoring Ukrainian businesses to success. In March 2024, a mentorship program was launched connecting Ukrainian businesswomen with US mentors. This program is currently underway with the first group of 10 Ukrainian businesswomen participating in biweekly mentorship sessions. Later this year, the program will enroll Ukrainian women war veterans and connect them with US mentors and relevant resources to assist them in re-entering the workforce and possibly requalify and gain new skills. And finally, the third project, which starts on 22nd of October, supporting Ukrainian women through advancing US business and diplomatic engagement goals related to gender equality in Ukraine. This project, again, is led by the Department of Commerce, US Department of Commerce and International Trade Administration, and it will expand the business acceleration program and will include the importance of commercial diplomacy to support Ukrainian women. This program will consist of a series of 6 virtual conferences to inform the US government's understanding of best practices to position Ukrainian women for business success. The conferences will bring together representatives from several US government agencies, the International Finance Corporation, Export-Import Bank, and the US Chamber of Commerce in Ukraine, and our own US-Ukraine Business Council. All these programs and many other such efforts are vital not only for the survival of the local communities during the war, but also for the successful rebuilding in the future. But the biggest work needs to be done by you, the members of the Mayor Club, the local leaders, the governments, the municipal authorities, and the local business people. At the closing of my remarks, I would like to stress once again that USUBC and its members are fully committed to investing and doing business in Ukraine's regions, cities, and communities. And we look forward to spreading the good word about their successes. We are confident that in the course of this trade mission, especially during the business-to-business sessions that you are going to hold tomorrow, some of our USUBC members will discover excellent potential business deals and reliable Ukrainian partners. I also want to commend your Mayor's Club for taking this really catchy and important slogan, economy of trust. This is something that our US UBC business are looking for. They are looking for trusted relationships with the local authorities, with the local partners, and the cultural gap that your chair, Mayor Henry, was talking about is not really a cultural gap. It's something that for us represents the old Ukraine, the consequences of 300 years of brutal colonial regime that new Ukraine has to get rid of and become a strong part of the civilized world. Thank you very much, and Slava Ukraini!
Thank you. There we go. Thank you so much. To be able to introduce Glyn Cosart-Cheney. She is a senior executive of APCO. The founder of APCO has been a long-time, very dear friend of mine, and I'm proud to say that APCO today is a majority female-owned company. But anyway, it's great to have you, Glyn. Please.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to address this group. I work for APCO. We're a global advisory and advocacy firm that really focuses on building diverse coalitions of people to achieve incredibly difficult, complex tasks. To be honest, I'm a little humbled to be addressing this group today. Coming up here and talking about the role of strategic communications when you have so much else to do, when you have deals to be done, when you have a country to protect and move forward, it can seem sort of less necessary to focus on what we say and who we say it to. But I'm here to make the case that while you are working and moving ahead on all of these incredibly difficult goals, that you also pay attention to and mind to how you communicate about where we've been, about the past, but also about where you're heading. This war, I think one of the things that we've seen is that information is moving faster than soldiers. It's moving faster than military equipment. And the way that we tell stories about what is happening in Ukraine is fundamentally either promoting, protecting, shaping Ukraine's future, or it's holding Ukraine back, depending on the message. How we tell the stories of this war will determine its outcome. Fair or unfair, that's the reality that we have to operate within as people who want to defend Ukraine's future. The narratives that we tell can build international support, as we've seen. They can bolster funding, they can boost morale, they can bring investors, they can counter disinformation. The right words and the right images on the right platforms build or undermine support for Ukraine. With every inch of territory hard fought, we can't afford to ignore how we communicate or ignore the messages being deployed by our enemies and opponents that are fighting against Ukraine. To be fair, Ukraine is already doing this incredibly successfully. The reason, at least from my perspective, that we have been able to defend Ukraine so fervently in the United States is because you and other Ukrainians have been so diligent about sharing who you are, what you're fighting for, why it matters, and what progress has been made. Your key strength is the ability to keep Ukraine's story in the spotlight. Passionate appeals by leadership, but not only by leadership. Virality on social media, seeing videos, hearing from real Ukrainians makes all the difference in the world as we struggle to maintain attention. My call to you is to leverage every single platform and opportunity available and to ensure that we're constantly keeping the pressure on about what we say and who we say it to. We need to continue to humanize this conflict and broaden the aperture. This isn't just a regional dispute. This is not something that the world can ignore. This is a global fight for freedom and democracy. By highlighting the civilian toll, destruction of infrastructure, violations of humanitarian law, you've been able to keep the war in the moral spotlight. But it's not sufficient to only focus on the harm that's been done. The opportunities that you're building here, the discussions that you're having, the work that you are doing, and the investments that you are making in your future are things that everyone needs to hear about. The business community needs to know, and they need to help partner with you and feel confident that they have the opportunity to do so. The problem, of course, is that Ukraine is up against incredibly aggressive communications tactics from Russia. Disinformation campaigns, weaponization of communication, efforts to undermine the ability of information to be transmitted, deliberately targeting communications networks, are all in an effort to control the global narrative. Flooding false information confuses, divides, and weakens your allies and those who are still on the fence about how to engage with Ukraine. Russia is deliberately deploying a communication strategy that exploits existing global divisions, playing on existing fault lines, economic hardship, political polarization, fatigue. It's very easy when people are already busy, when they're tired, to allow those messages to hold them back, to think that it matters less to continue keeping Ukraine in the spotlight. We've also seen that for Russia, nothing is off limits from a communications perspective or from an attack perspective. Everything is fair game when deploying these direct and malign attacks, and we cannot afford to allow the promotion of conspiracies, infiltrating news networks, hacking, and other attacks to win the war of communications, as we're also fighting on the battlefield. Those narratives and methods of communication are incredibly effective in influencing the perspectives of people around the world, and they undermine efforts for us to maintain strong sanctions regimes, to maintain funding, and to ultimately increase opportunities for us to support Ukraine. As an American, I'm sorry to have to ask you to do this. I think it's a shame that we can't carry water for ourselves and make sure that we're the partners and the allies that you deserve for us to be. But what I would ask is that you help those of us who believe in Ukraine and believe in Ukraine's future to arm us with the opportunities to tell really impactful stories and defend you both as your partners and from afar. The threats that we face now and as we look to the future of Ukraine, while not fundamentally a communications problem, all have a nexus that relies on communications. Talking about military fatigue, resource depletion, supply chain challenges, political will, shifting in focus to domestic political issues, all fundamentally are opportunities to communicate about Ukraine and about Ukraine's future in a positive and proactive way. If we don't, we risk losing the war in Ukraine. We risk not delivering the essential support that you deserve from our government and from our business partners. The enemy is expecting us to fail. They're expecting us to allow our alliances to fragment and to lose focus over time. We can't allow Russia's messages to dominate the conversation. So that's a lot of doom and gloom. I want to leave us and talk through some opportunities of what we can do. What are messages to deploy? What are ways of deploying them that could help solidify the partnerships that we're building and the opportunities that we have for the future? First, we have to stay focused on the key narrative. This fight is about Ukraine, but it's not just about Ukraine. Losing is not an option that anyone can afford. The stakes are too high for international audiences to ignore, and while we understand that there is plenty going on in the world, this has to remain in the spotlight. We have to continue countering disinformation with authenticity. The most powerful antidote to disinformation is authentic, direct storytelling. I don't have to tell you that the voices that you're hearing from the Ukrainian people, from your constituents, from your neighbors, from your friends, you are the champion for those voices while you are here in the United States. If we don't hear those stories from you, we risk not hearing them at all. These are personal stories of resilience, suffering, and hope. These are ultimately stories about opportunity that have to be used to cut through the noise. We need to hear about the human cost and about your futures. The power of those contributions makes all the difference in the world when we have to focus in and get our allies back on board. They also help to undermine fatigue, reinforcing the direct impact of the work that allies are doing. What do dollars buy? What do dollars protect? What are we investing in for the future? Fundamentally reaffirms that the efforts that our allies are taking matter, that they're helping to construct something that we all want to stand for. And as frustrating as it is, I know that getting out of Ukraine is extremely difficult, that you're investing a lot of time to be here. I want to affirm for you that your presence and showing up in global capitals and keeping your foot on the gas is essential, and we appreciate it. I know that it's hard. I know that coming to conferences and speaking on panels and sort of doing the rounds can feel like wasted effort, and I want to assure you that it's not. That every time you come here, you are making a difference in defending your country and defending the people who are all around you in Ukraine. I also want to challenge you to think about other ways to carry the story forward. Thinking about the diversity of voices and champions that you have to speak on behalf of Ukraine, your diaspora communities. I'll be honest, I was extremely moved by the Olympians participating who were able to speak about their training in Kyiv and otherwise, sort of the power of defending and championing Ukraine. Your business leaders, your elected officials. Everyone has a role in communicating their part of the story and their opportunity for Ukraine. You also have a diversity of themes, focusing in on self-determination. Your fight against authoritarianism are all important, but sometimes we have to get down to the basics. What's the economic impact? What's the cost benefit? What's the human experience? The more specific and tangible we can be, the more successful those messages are to deploy. For those in the room here, I want to give you hope that you are some of the most powerful voices to advocate on behalf of the Ukrainian people that we have. For the international businesses and for the Ukrainian businesses in the room, your deals are essential, the money and the investments are essential, but you also have the opportunity to deploy your networks, your platforms, and your partnerships to create other opportunities to share the message about Ukraine. Think about your employees. Think about the other initiatives and the funding that they are doing and ways that you can magnify the voices of people working for you. To those here representing Ukrainian communities, you are the direct link to your people. Your stories need to be heard, and no one knows better than you what you've been through or what you need. So don't let us tell you otherwise, and keep pushing. Keep looking for ways to spread the message via social media, interviews, direct access to politicians, voters, and investors. Every opportunity you have to tell your truth, you should do it. We need a whole-of-society approach to defend Ukraine, and so diverse tactics help reach the broadest base possible. It's on you to speak up, and it's on us to listen and to repeat it, to share it, to ensure that we're telling the message as far as we can. Strategic communications is a cornerstone of Ukraine's resistance. It is an essential tool now to build its future. We have to keep the pressure on and make sure that there's a steady stream of accurate, impactful information from Ukraine and from all of us supporters. So I'm here to say thank you for your time, thank you for the stories that you're carrying, and let's keep telling the truth. Thank you.
The ethics panel would come up, please.
1, 2.
Thank you, Glenn, very much. You know, an interesting tidbit. I've sat on the International Advisory Council of APCO for 20, 30 years. And the very first office that APCO opened, now mine, they've got 80 offices, they have close to 1,000 people. The very first office that they opened overseas was in Moscow. They were one of the first American companies to leave when the invasion took place. And so I'm very proud of the founder and the president of APCO, Marjorie Krause, and delighted that Glenn could spend time with us. Now we're going to be talking about something very special. You know, you cannot imagine if you were an American after the Russian invasion, you heard over and over and over again that the external enemy of Ukraine was the Kremlin. The internal enemy is corruption. We began to hear all sorts of stories about corruption. I had one of our distinguished fellows at the Washington Institute spend 3 months, PhD from MIT, and he got a real feel for how things run. And I continued to get together with Western businesses. And these business leaders would tell me, you know, we don't want to get involved. The last thing we need to do is to get involved in a corrupt situation. And, you know, we have so many opportunities around the world in other countries. So this does not make a whole lot of sense for us at this point. But that image is changing. I'm delighted that the Washington Institute, for example, has signed an agreement with the Ukrainian Catholic University to be able to put into place a program that's a bit different than what we're talking about with the Mayor's Club. Rather, it is educating government officials, business executives, and students across Ukraine, working with other universities, to be able to provide the kind of program that will allow them to get a certificate so that they can show that they effectively have put together a program so that people understand what is corrupt, what is unethical, and what is not. And so your coming here today and being with us in Washington, D.C. is sending a very strong message. The Mayor's Club has been doing an extraordinary job in being able to mobilize you to be able to deal with this whole issue of ethics. And I can tell you, as much as you don't have within your possession directly to be able to defeat and bring this war to an end, the one thing you can do is to be able to make sure that you're business ready so that today and tomorrow you'll be able to see that there is a newer, a rebirth of a country that you all love and which we've all come to love here in the United States. You cannot drive down a street in Washington or in the area and not see Ukrainian flags flying high. That's how much we respect you. And most of those people aren't Ukrainian. But anyway, I'm absolutely delighted to have 3 extraordinary individuals. And we'll start to my left, and that's Bill Novelli. Bill is a very close friend of mine who sits on our board, our council at the Washington Institute. But Bill has had an incredible career. He, at one time for 10 years, was the CEO of AARP, which is one of the largest nonprofit organizations, not only in the United States, but also in the world. He was founder of Porter Novelli, a PR firm, but it was at Georgetown that we became great colleagues. I taught at Georgetown for almost 20 years and started a couple of initiatives. He's been very much involved with all that, but he is particularly interested in the future of Ukraine and how important it is to make sure that a country like Ukraine and the businesses and the municipalities are beyond reproach when it comes to understanding that they want to be transparent, they want to be accountable, they want to be as ethical as possible. And so, if I may, I'm going to turn the floor over to Bill.
Jim, thank you. Good morning to everybody. So I've spent half my career in the private sector and half in public service in the United States and internationally. And we heard earlier today about corruption being the elephant in the room, and how we've got to deal with corruption in Ukraine in order to attract investment. But one of the most important things I've learned in my work and in my career is that no country has a monopoly on good government and ethical behavior, including the United States. We all have a lot of work to do. At Georgetown, I taught MBA students on ethical leadership for business and society. And I also taught that to State Department people and business executives through executive education. And one of the things, Jim, I think I told you about this, one of the things I always do is I start off with a satirical book that I introduce the students to. And it's called Get Rich Cheating, The Crooked Path to Easy Street. So I present this to the students or to the State Department people, business executives, and the essence of the book is, why not cheat? Everybody's doing it. You can too. Cheating isn't bad or wrong. It's not going to send you to hell. There are successful cheaters in business, nonprofits, sports, show business, and especially politics. Greed is good. And so that's how I start my sessions. And I've got to tell you, Jim, and I think you'll know this, 99% of the executives and the students I work with reject those concepts out of hand. And one Chinese woman on a virtual session held up her baby, and she said, "This is why I don't cheat." So if people feel that way, why is it that we can look in the news every day of the week and see bad behavior, see malfeasance, not just around the world, but here in this country as well? Why do people act this way? And I have some thoughts about it, and Jim, I'm sure your other guests and colleagues do as well.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. You know, I like Bill, I had the chance to teach business ethics on the graduate level at Georgetown. But one thing I always did in the undergraduate school was to be able to spend, when I was teaching international business, to spend one class just on ethics alone. And I used to give people incredible stories about how I had personally been bribed in the Middle East, in Central America. And I can remember going through these stories, and believe it or not, a student who I became extremely close to and remain to this day was Eric Trump, the son of Donald Trump. And I can remember after I'd gone through all these stories, he raised his hand and he said, "Professor," he said, "these are incredible stories that you've told, but how do we know what we're entering into or what we're in the middle of is corrupt or it isn't corrupt?" And so my response to him was simply this: if what you're doing or you're about to do were to end up in an article on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, would your mother be proud of you? And that pretty much clearly showed, how to be able to answer that question. A few years later, every time I would go up to New York, he and I would get together for breakfast or lunch. And I can remember sitting with him, and I said, "By the way, you now are in the Trump Organization. You're involved in the construction industry here in New York. And the construction industry has always had the reputation of being one of the most corrupt industries in America. Have you experienced or faced any of this?" And he had one word for me, and it was this: "Well," and that told me everything about what he had been facing ever since. The next person I would like to introduce, and another good friend, a wonderful friend, Steve Young, who was with me in this particular room when we launched the Washington Institute. But Steve is the head of the CAUX Roundtable for Moral Capitalism, an organization that was founded in the 60s in Europe, in Switzerland, and he has done an extraordinary job. Every day there is some kind of an email that comes out that talks about this incredibly important issue and how together the Roundtable is working with with countries from Thailand to Vatican City to elsewhere, to be able to instill in people this sense of how important it is to be moral and how you do that in everyday life.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for inviting me to participate in something which is very important not only for Ukraine, but for Europe, for the United States, and for the world. I was thinking, sort of focusing more a little while ago, that I've actually been there before. What the Ukrainians are dealing with, what you, Henry, are dealing with and you want to do. It was a number of years ago. It was in a country called South Vietnam. And in 1969 and 70, I was pulled out of the district advisor by Bill Colby, who was later director of the CIA, to be responsible for planning decentralization of power to the 2,200 villages of the South Vietnamese, if you will, the 2,200 mayors. And we did it. We decentralized power, and it defeated the communists. Then I was moved over to the embassy to work on economic development during wartime, because we knew that the American troops were leaving. The South Vietnamese were going to have to fight on their own for some long period of time. And their economy had to create the money in order to support that effort, right? So I was working on corruption. What I would like to contribute first, and I have some other ideas, is our organization has come up with, I think, something that every Ukrainian can use, though right now it's in English. By the way, my book, Moral Capitalism, has been translated into 2 Slavic languages. One is Russian, so we don't have to talk about that. The other is Croat. But there's a possibility you could translate that into Ukrainian. But we came up with the notion, and you're talking about an economy of trust. The fundamental human principle is that trust rests on ethics. That's what my colleagues have said. If you're going to build an economy, a society of trust, you've got to figure out what ethics are. One of the lessons I've learned in this is the word ethics for many people sort of puts you off. It sounds like you're talking about Aristotle or Immanuel Kant or something like that. If you use the word moral or trust or morale, I think you get at what is the human need to trust other people. We have created a set of ethical principles for governments. If the elephant in the room is corruption, that means you have to deal with what the economists call rent extraction. That's what government officials do. That's what mafia people do. How do you stop rent extraction? You have to start with people in the government. I put out lots of copies of our ethical principles, and every one of you is welcome to take them back, translate them into Ukrainian. The other thing you can do, and I've volunteered to do this for Jim, is we put together a training teaching handbook on moral government. You could have every mayor in Ukraine organize workshops for the people working for the municipalities, for business people, for others. You could train every Ukrainian official in the principles of moral government, and I'd be happy to work with you. Before I segue to a second point, the question came up about corruption and its relationship to the economy. I suggest that the Ukrainians study Singapore, because I just checked on my cell phone. In 2022, the per capita GDP of the United States of America was $73,000 per capita. In Singapore, it was $86,000. Singapore has higher GDP per capita than the United States. Singapore, as many of you may know, basically has no corruption. And that was the first principle of Lee Kuan Yew when he was elected in 1959. And I could introduce you to George Yeo, retired foreign minister. They figured out how to do this. Now, I know it's hard coming after hundreds of years of top-down government. But let me segue to a second point, which is the war. How do you win a war? If you read Clausewitz, and I brought a copy of Clausewitz along, and it's a good read, he talks in the beginning about the most important factor in war, which is morale. Most of his book is written about the battle, tactical considerations. But he talks about war, and many of you may know this, as an extension of politics. In other words, if your morale is low, you're not going to win. And the problem we had in the United States vis-a-vis the Vietnam War was low morale, because we taught ourselves from academics a narrative that the South Vietnamese weren't very good people. So if you work on ethics, you have, as we Americans say, a twofer. You are preparing the foundation for your economy for trust and for growth, and you are helping yourselves win the war. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. One of the things that is so important, I think, and that is to understand that we have certainly received stories here about how President Zelensky and the Ukrainian government have tried to weed out unsavory characters when it comes to corruption. And there have been agencies that have been formed, et cetera. What we're talking about and what you are doing and that is being revolutionaries in dealing with the issue of corruption from the ground up, not from the top down. If you change the thinking, if you change the understanding of what is corrupt and what is not corrupt from the ground up, you're going to do a much better job. It's going to be much more pervasive. And this is something that not only is Ukraine going to be in a position to adopt and to be able to see in a visible way how the cost of living, or excuse me, the standard of living is going to rise as a result, but it will have essentially established a model for other countries that face the problem of corruption. No country around the world is safe from corruption, but there are certainly things that can be done to be able to minimize it to the fullest extent possible. And that gives me an opportunity to introduce Gary Kalman, who has become a friend by Zoom over a long time. He is heading up Transparency International here in the United States, and he has some wonderful thoughts, and I'm looking forward to hearing what he's going to share with us.
Thank you, Jim, and I am delighted to be here and share a few thoughts on how we overcome corruption. It is a delight to be on the panel with these esteemed colleagues. So let me quickly just start. For those that may not be familiar, Transparency International is the largest global coalition dedicated to fighting corruption. We have chapters in approximately 115 countries, including Ukraine. Many of you, I think, just speaking earlier in the lobby, I know are familiar with TI Ukraine. And I would encourage you, when you get back to Ukraine, to look them up, and I'm going to have some thoughts about how you can engage with them productively. I want to start, we talk a lot about corruption being a problem, and it's a driver to both economic development and hopefully a way of improving the war effort. I want to be a little bit more specific in that, at least in the United States and in many places in the world, corruption is seen as one of those things that is a secondary problem. We often hear that it is, in some cases, a victimless crime, that there's a little bit of money that moves around, but does it really hurt people on the ground? And I do want to just run through a few places around the world and some examples to help drill down on that. When the pandemic hit, billions of dollars went through the IMF into countries all over the world to fight the pandemic. Billions were lost because of corruption. People didn't get the health care they needed, and people died. A few months after the pandemic started and the money started flowing, the IMF realized what was happening, and they put in anti-corruption measures. And this is also important, that anti-corruption measures can work. You could literally see a decrease in the number of deaths and an increase in the amount of people being able to receive health care. In Beirut, because of corruption, we all watched with tragedy the explosion of the warehouse that was holding chemicals that should never have been there, but because of bribes and other corruption problems, you had a huge swath of the port blown up and people's lives destroyed. We've even seen in some countries where corrupt officials in the military are stealing money, literally running it through shell companies in Florida and other places in the United States. our complicity, and then funneling it back to their home country to fund private militias to go after, harass, and worse, their political opposition. We saw multinational companies try and get into Guatemala after 3 years of trying because of corruption. They simply pulled out. In El Salvador, we're actually seeing a reduction in direct foreign investment because of corruption concerns there. And in Mongolia, one company invested $1 billion in infrastructure before corruption chased them out of that country in which they lost money. If Ukraine is going to be able to rebuild, and we want to do everything we can to help you, this is not just sort of an esoteric or theoretic problem. It will directly impact investor confidence in moving forward. Let me say two other things. One, do these measures work, or is corruption just with us forever? Getting corruption down to zero, as Jim noted, we're never going to get there. Every country has its problem. No country, including the United States and elsewhere, has ridden itself completely of corruption. But there have been successes, and let me give two quick examples. There were 2 hurricanes that hit the United States about a year or so apart. In the first one, the United States appropriated billions and billions of dollars. There were no anti-corruption measures. We needed to go, and it was urgent. We needed to get the money down into the southeastern part of the country. In another one, we did have anti-corruption measures. That went to the northeastern part of the country. In the first part of the country, in the first effort, 23% of the funds were lost or stolen to corruption. In the second, 2.7% of the funds were lost or stolen to corruption. When you're talking about billions and billions, tens of billions of dollars, that's businesses that were never rebuilt, lives that were never restored, homes and sheltering that never fully took place. There are still communities 15, 20 years after these hurricanes hit in the southeastern part of the city, southeastern part of the country that have still yet to recover because of corruption. Finally, I will say, since we have a lot of mayors in the room, at the municipal level, this works as well. In the city of Guadalajara, Mexico, they were having a problem with corruption in their business practices, and they went forward and put their licensing and permitting processes online, so you didn't have to walk in and deal with an individual to get a license to operate your business in the town. Through an academic study that was commissioned by the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation, they found requests for bribes, demand for bribes, paying of bribes dropped by 70%. And so you began to open up that community to business opportunity that would otherwise never exist. Let me end with one other thing, and then I'll turn the mic back, is Transparency International Ukraine has started a Transparent Cities initiative, more and more helping communities try and put, I see Henry, you're familiar with it, trying to help cities put more of their information online, being more transparent, building confidence in those cities that investments are actually going to work and build the economy. Would encourage you, and we can talk more about it in the discussion, but would encourage you to connect with TI Ukraine, and take a look at that initiative. I think it's done a lot of good. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, so much. You know, when the war began, after the Russian invasion, an awful lot of people turned to Transparency International to see whether or not Ukraine was going to be able to improve its status, and it has. We're all very proud of that. It's got a long way to go, but at the same time, it's so important. I'm going to just mention 2 very quick stories of my personally being offered incredible bribes where I could make $1 million overnight. A mutual friend from the Middle East said, I've got this friend who's coming into Washington and he would love to get together with you. Would you do it? I said, sure I will, because of the closeness that I had with his friend. And I got together and he walked in the door for dinner, and he had this huge bottle of very, very expensive alcohol. And I thought to myself, that's very odd for somebody, and I realized it probably cost about $1,000. And he said, here's a little gift that I wanted to give you. He said, by the way, I want to talk to you about a deal. He said, I love the notion that you have the title honorable at the beginning of your name. He said, I want to talk to you a little bit about, we've got this wonderful way, right at that particular moment, the war in the Middle East was going on with Iraq and Saddam Hussein. And he said, we have figured out a way to be able to get around the UN sanctions against Saddam Hussein. We figured out how to get around the US sanctions of Ukraine. But if you could only be out in the front with us and be involved with all this, I promise you, you'll be a millionaire overnight. And I looked at him, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't stop him. I felt like I was in the middle of a James Bond movie. And so I just tried to get more and more information from him about how this whole thing would be put together. And of course, that was the last time I ever spoke to him. That was the end of the day. Another instance, it was I had launched a relationship with somebody in Guatemala. And there were two young men who, one was 28 and one was 27, and they were the CEO and the COO of the National Telecommunications Company of Guatemala. And I flew down to Guatemala, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a PowerPoint presentation, and it was extraordinary. They wanted to privatize the telecommunications industry. And in that way, people would not have to go many, many miles away to be able to talk to somebody in one of the few telephone areas, to be able to talk to their relatives overseas, et cetera. If you decentralized it, there were private sector companies that could make it much easier, much simpler, and much cheaper. And so they said, would you do it? I said, absolutely, this is incredible. And they were impeccably dressed, and they looked like they had just come out of Hollywood. And as I say, they were 27, 26. And I found out that the one who was the CEO happened to be the son of the chairman of the ruling party of Guatemala. And so I got back home, and my partner from Guatemala came to Washington unexpectedly. My secretary said, by the way, Mr. Moore, so-and-so is here to see you. I said, I didn't know he was coming to the United States to get together. And so he came in, and I could tell he was extremely nervous. And he said to me, by the way, they love what you've done. You've gone to New York City, Wall Street, you've gotten the necessary funding. We're ready to go. And I said, yep. I said, there was a bit of hard work, but we've got it, we're ready to go. And he said, well, there's one little wrinkle. They would actually like to have 10% of the money that you're getting to privatize the telecommunications company of Guatemala, and they would like to see that that goes into an offshore account in the Caribbean to be able to take care of the political party of Guatemala. And I said, you've got to be kidding me. I said, my God, I said, we signed an agreement that made it clear that and I used to be responsible for working with companies to make sure that they did not violate the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. He said, well, I'm sorry, but honestly, if we don't do it, the deal is dead. They want that 10%. And 10% for them at that point was going to be about $8–10 million. So he walked away very upset that I wasn't going to agree to do that. 1 month later, I picked up the Financial Times on my doorstep, and there on page 8 was an article about those two individuals, the CEO and the COO. They had been caught on something entirely different, and they were facing a sentence that turned out to be 8 years in jail. And so, you think about these kinds of things, and you recognize how important it is to be true to yourself and to be true with others. And that is the only way that gets you to be able to be in a good place. We have a few more minutes. I would love to be able to see if, Bill, if you have anything else to add?
I do. There have been books and volumes and literature written about this issue of ethics and responsibility. And I think that we need to bring it down to its essence. And the essence of ethics is it's the right thing to do. And one of my heroes is an African-American sprinter from the 1934 Olympics in Berlin. This guy's name was Jesse Owens. And what Jesse Owens said was, once the race starts, he said, it's not about black or white. It's about fast or slow. But that's only true if everybody starts at the same place at the starting line. So what we're talking about at its very essence is the right thing to do and a sense of fairness.
Thank you.
Perhaps another comment. What is the deep basis inside any person for ethics or good behavior? What distinguishes one person from another, listening to Jim's story? What distinguishes me from you, Henry from somebody else? It's something in our character. And perhaps ethics is maybe at a higher level. But if you go down to your moral core, where does that come from? And this is a deeper study, and it's not usually taught about in lectures on business ethics and things like this. But one thinks it has to go to who you are as a kind of religious, spiritual person. What are you trying to do with your life? Where I'm going to this, particularly I think in Ukraine, and Jim's relationship with the Catholic University, is Catholic social teachings, a religious framework. You can get from religious frameworks to behaviors in business and in a commitment to your country. And that's fairly easy to do. The concept of a responsible government official, a responsible general, is the notion, we have it in English, of holding a trust responsibility. You are not there for yourself. You are there to serve others. And I was just thinking that there is, in Ezekiel 34 in the Old Testament, which applies to Roman Catholics, Greek Orthodox, and Russian Orthodox and Protestants. It's a statement about the shepherds who are supposed to be taking care of the flock of Israel. And they're not feeding the flock. They're feeding themselves. And the prophet Ezekiel has the word from the Lord that the Lord is going to discharge the shepherds to keep them from feeding themselves. So I think deeply, I'm guessing, because I've never been to Ukraine, but I'm guessing in the spiritual religious traditions of the Ukrainian people, going back, to the conversion of Prince Vladimir to Christianity in 942 or whenever it was, that there are deep roots in the Ukrainian people that you could build on, a sense of pride, a sense of personal achievement, of goodness. So again, my thinking is, with my colleagues, that this is very doable. The fact that many people don't do it is sort of their fault. But if one goes to the heart of the matter, which is in the heart of all of us, you can make things happen and collapses do not happen.
Thank you. Jerry, would you like to?
Just a couple of closing thoughts. I think I very much appreciate the comments of my colleagues in thinking about this and making sure people understand and can internalize the ethics and the sort of moral reason to drive this forward. I'm going to sort of bring it down a little bit, maybe to a more practical level, but I also think we need to make sure that the systems are in place and there's communication between multiple parties that help to build this trust. And so a couple of thoughts. One is, somebody mentioned earlier, the DREAM system. It is being taken up by more and more communities in Ukraine, and would encourage you to utilize that system. And sort of three quick recommendations here to those of you that have online systems where you're putting this information. One is to assign one person to make sure that they are responsible for that system. We've seen in several places in Ukraine where no one's taking responsibility for it, nothing gets updated, it's not actually being utilized or used for its maximum purpose. The other thing is to make sure that these systems are integrated so that there's full information, and to make sure that you're sharing it, whether it's on social media or meeting with the civil society folks. I know that in some places there's hesitancy to engage with civil society because the thought is, oh, if they learn something, are we going to get beat up about it? The reality is that what we've seen is where there is less communication, there is more likelihood that outside groups are going to be critical. That once there is a relationship built, when there's sharing of information, that actually helps to build bridges and mitigate the belief that there's something nefarious going on and less likely to come out and be critical. The final thing I would like to say is we are starting to see some creative financial instruments that are developing to help pay for this, right? Because we all have financing coming in. We need to use that money to build the projects and to invest in the economic development. So how do you actually have the money to hire the staff and build these anti-corruption systems and mechanisms? We're seeing money, there's money at USAID that can go to help build these systems, anti-corruption money. We're also working with a number of investors, for example, on a new type of governance-linked bond. That is, we will invest in your project, and if you agree to implement governance protections, anti-corruption measures, we will reduce the cost of that financing. And with the savings, use some of that to actually build the systems to create the anti-corruption mechanisms. And so there's a lot going on, and I'll end with this, that for all the struggles and challenges in the country, it is true, as was noted before, my organization creates something called the Corruption Perceptions Index, where we sort of rank 180 countries on the perceptions of corruption in a country. And in the last year, despite all the challenges faced by Ukraine, be encouraged that the score actually went up by a few points, and there's still a long way to go. There's a lot of challenges, but you all are doing it, and I would encourage you to keep doing it, and I think we can really make this happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Gary. With the last few minutes of this ethics panel, let me just mention a couple of things that are very important. And this has come together in conjunction with the Mayor's Club and what brought us really together originally, as well as the Economy of Trust Ukraine. And that is, we have put together a one-page sheet that we're going to be talking about tomorrow. It's going to be a code of conduct that we want to be able to have an exchange with you, particularly the mayors of Ukraine who are with us, to be able to talk about what that one page should look like so that we can sign it and that the mayors of Ukraine across the country can sign this one-page piece that makes it clear that you stand for integrity, for ethics, for transparency, and for accountability. And I can promise you that we are going to make sure that those who have signed that are going to abide by the code that is laid out, that companies that are interested in being able to invest and put together commercial operations in your municipality will know that you have subscribed to a code of conduct. We also are going to be talking about the 10-class course that is being put together now that can be taken virtually, and that you ultimately and your top deputies in your cities can take to be able to understand not just ethics, which will be prime, but also how to be more efficient and more effective in the way you run your municipal governments. And that too will be shown to Western businesses who are considering investing in your city. So for some of you, it'll be competition between and among you, but for all of you, it's going to mean a stronger, a better Ukraine. All right, well, thank you so much for that. And is Chris Scott here? There we go. And we're going to have Chris Scott come up, and thank you. And please extend our appreciation to these three wonderful individuals who were with us. Thank you.
That would be the right place to do it.
You'll have to great movie about Jesse Owens. That's
Yeah, it's the Olympics.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I know that we've all had a long morning, but that was a great panel. It's been a really interesting morning, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. I was really particularly thrilled to be able to come to this venue, and I'm glad that you're starting your journey here with us. This building was really built as a testament to collaboration and cooperation for the people of the Americas. And so I think it's really fitting when we're talking about the future collaboration and cooperation between the people of the United States and the Americas and Ukraine that we start here. For myself, I've probably been by this building a dozen times, and so I'm glad I was finally invited inside. And again, to be with you here today. Chemonics, in partnership with USAID, is going to be honored to support this delegation to come to our offices tomorrow, and we'll welcome you all to engage in a marathon of business-to-business matching with American companies, exploring strategies to build a more resilient, innovative, and future for the regions that you come from. I actually had the pleasure of living in Ukraine for a number of years, and actually was there about 4 months ago for the launch of a new USAID program that Chemonics is working on in the agricultural sector. And it was striking to me, how resilient and normal things were there in a time where things, as we know, are not normal. And so I really want to congratulate you all. Mayors in particular are at the forefront of this historic and heroic battle. Most of you and your people are under constant attack or threat of attack. But I got to witness your resolve and the resilience of your citizens as you all continue to rebuild, develop, and thrive despite the hostilities. At Chemonics, we're really proud to be part of the Ukrainian story for a number of years in the development space. We currently have over 500 Ukrainian staff members, actually international, but mostly Ukrainian staff members across our portfolio of programs in Ukraine. And we're working with farmers to expand the agricultural sector, supporting companies to expand their export base, and aiding firms on the front lines to resurrect their cities and engage with their people and civil society. Our teams are catalyzing innovation by supporting IT clusters and pioneers in digital solutions, robotics, smart prosthetics. We are supporting Ukrainian entities with transparent recovery processes, reinforcing connections between the liberated and the occupied areas of Ukraine until they're all occupied no more. One example is the USAID Agro Invest program, where we're accelerating economic development in rural Ukrainian communities, helping over 15,000 farmers ensure food security not only for Ukraine, but for the people of the world. The new USAID Harvest program, which I mentioned earlier, and I got to be there for the launch, is a $280 million continued investment in that critical business and critical sector in Ukraine. Since Russia's full-time invasion, the USAID's competitive economic program, Sep, has expanded sales and exports to close to $500 million, working with over 4,300 Ukrainian firms. They've safeguarded more than 78,000 jobs, and they've created an additional, an additional 61,000 jobs. Today, we stand united by a shared goal of supporting Ukraine to win this war and to secure its future. This forum is a testament to the unwavering commitment of both the U.S. government and the American private sector to foster and to drive that future. Chemonics is proud to be a trusted partner with USAID and also the United Kingdom FCDO programs in Ukraine. We support communities, we support local governments, we support the private sector, and we support the people of Ukraine on their journey of reconstruction and revitalization. We are dedicated to helping its people live healthier, more productive, and more independent lives. Looking ahead, the role of a strong private sector and private sector partnerships is critical to Ukraine's reconstruction and long-term prosperity. A robust private sector is essential for rebuilding and ensuring prosperity long after the conflict. The role of finance in this endeavor cannot be understated. Access to capital is vital for the development of infrastructure, business, and communities. We must encourage financial institutions and investors to continue to commit to Ukraine's reconstruction efforts. Only this way can we guarantee that there's going to be sustainable growth. I am pleased to see on the agenda participants from investment banks and the international development and finance institutions who are essential to going to be fueling that recovery. By 2030, more than 4.5 million jobs will be needed to be added. Ukrainians are going to need to acquire new skills, expand its workforce, and reintegrate veterans and war injured into their economy. Chemonics is actively contributing to building an efficient workforce through these initiatives. Through initiatives like Skilled UA, equipping 8,000 Ukrainians with future skills. We are training women in what maybe traditionally have been considered male-dominant jobs, and keeping the supply chain up and running and moving, which will be the critical lifeblood for Ukraine's future. All of our work is done in partnership with local heroes, such as the mayors who are all with us here today, local NGO leaders, business leaders, community leaders. At this point, I want to take a moment to honor the people of Ukraine, and especially our dedicated Ukrainian staff. Ukraine's strength lies in its people, its unwavering spirit, and the determination to really build back better. Our challenge in the coming days is to work together on identifying high-impact initiatives that can attract American and other international investors and help Ukraine secure its future through investment, finance, export promotion, and inward investment. I want to thank you all again for letting me come and welcome you here today, and we very much look forward of seeing you with us at our office tomorrow to begin that journey together. Thank you so much.
Excuse me, the members of the ethics panel, if you'd be good enough to step out here, there's a little something that you're going to get. By the way, I'm sure some of you are saying, what the heck are we doing here in this building, which is called the Organization of American States? Well, let me tell you, the Organization of American States had as one of the observers from outside this hemisphere, Russia. Russia was an active observer here in the Organization of American States. Well, let me tell you that when Russia invaded Ukraine, this organization was one of the first to get rid of Russia from its observer status. And so we could not have a more appropriate place in which to be able to hold all this. And so I am delighted. Is Vera here? I haven't seen Vera. Oh, you're right there. Forgive me. I'm delighted. I, at one time, as I mentioned, I think earlier, had been responsible for what was called the Invest in USA program. I ended up at one point having to go to Germany, and I was asked to be able to talk to Germans about investing in the United States. And I thought to myself, how could I ever do that in English? So I thought, well, you know, I took German in high school. So I delivered the speech in German in Stuttgart and in Dusseldorf, and I was very proud of myself. And then I got a request coming in saying, could you please talk to Frenchmen in Paris about investing in the United States? And I thought, well, you know, I took French in college too. So I got my team, the French desk. I said, look, I want this to be as perfect in terms of my pronunciation as it could possibly be. And so I flew into Paris, and I had to go directly from the airport and deliver this speech at lunch. And so I arrived, and the master of ceremonies was American. He said, I think it's wonderful that you agreed to come. You've just arrived? I said, yes. He said, and I'm also told that you're going to do this in French. And I said, yes. And with that, he opened the door, and there were 500 people and television cameras in the back. And I thought, oh my God. And it turned out that it turned out just fine. And so I was delighted to head up this Invest in USA program, and we put together a guide to be able to have a guidepost to how to invest and what the rules are, et cetera. And I am absolutely delighted, but we're working with BDO to be able to put together the latest guide possible so that we can really teach Westerners what the opportunities are and how best to be able to engage themselves in the future of Ukraine. Vera, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, James, for inviting me, for having me. Thank you, Julia. Thank you to all organizers. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Vera Savchenko. I'm CEO of BDO in Ukraine. BDO is an international accounting and advisory company and Ukrainian branch based in Kiev and Dnipro. Also, I am a co-chairwoman of Ukraine Recovery Committee within European Business Association in Ukraine. Before I start, I want to sincerely thank each of you for support of Ukraine during these difficult times. We Ukrainians truly appreciate your commitment to stand with Ukraine. Today I'm here, would like to speak about unique opportunity, investing in Ukraine. While the ongoing war is a significant challenge, I stand here to emphasize that Ukraine is welcome for investment. Ukraine is open for business. Ukraine's strategic resilience and commitment to reform offers unique opportunities for private sector. Our economy is ready for partnership that will not only be rebuilt, but also redefine our future. A future-focused Ukraine is where resilience meets opportunities. Ukraine has always been a critical economic player in Europe. Yeah, that's my presentation. Can I have next slide, please? And in other parts of the world. Ministry of Economy of Ukraine defines 8 sectors as critical to our economy. Can I have next slide, please? Oh, thank you very much. So these sectors are critical. Agriculture, energy, they continue to thrive and expand in terms of investment. IT is a really big and important sector in Ukraine. Now it has a separate stream, defense tech. It's really well developed and developing very quickly. For example, we have special tax regime DSCT. It's really unique, and because of this DSCT, Ukraine is a hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. Really, tech leaders from all over the world are coming to Ukraine because of this DSCT regime, which supports our IT industry. This brings me to my next point. The rebuilding of Ukraine cannot happen without private investment. But it isn't just about restoring what we have lost, like production facilities from Soviet era. It's about building back better, building back smart, and building back sustainable. This is a global call to action, and US investments are really driving force behind a new Ukraine. There was already information about DREAM platform, but we also have Prozoro platforms. These platforms are centralized, transparent government systems for managing reconstruction projects. They ensure that every dollar invested is tracked, delivering maximum impact. Let me dig deeper a little bit what is more on the ground in Ukraine. Ukraine's journey towards EU membership is additional advantage. Our rebuilding efforts will be under European standards. Admission to EU and recovery, they are not two parallel processes, this is one process. It means that every road rebuilt, every factory modernized, every digital system implemented, deployed, will be designed with EU and the best world standards in mind, offering competitive and future-ready infrastructure for investors. Also, let me say about so-called big privatization in Ukraine, privatization of state-owned enterprises. This offers unique opportunities to acquire valuable assets at competitive price and offering access to really unique assets. The latest important update is that Ukrainian Export Credit Agency, Ukrainian ECA, started to insure local and foreign investments against war risks. Recently, they signed its first investment credit insurance contract against war risk with exporter from Lviv region. The company is the biggest seller of printing inks in Ukraine. Let me also show what Ukrainian business, Ukrainian companies are thinking about future. This is the result of European Business Association survey about what business leaders think regarding 2025. So more than half of Ukrainian companies, 53%, forecast positive growth for their business. It is a slight decline from 58% last year, but the optimism remains strong. A third of business leaders, around 33%, expect to maintain performance at the last year level, when only 14% predict negative dynamics. In terms of financial predictions, the outlook is also promising. 72%, this is really a substantial number, of executives expects revenue growth in Ukrainian hryvnias. Of these, 33% predict growth up to 10%, 23% of business foresee increase from 11 to 12%, and 14% are planning growth exceed 21%. When we look at growth in US dollars, 43% of Ukrainian business expect growth. Investment intentions, while being more conservative, remain significant. The number of Ukrainian companies planning large-scale investment projects in 2025 has dropped by 10% from 2024, but in the same time, expected average for investment in numbers is growing, because for 2025, average sum of investment will be $9 million, compared to $8 million in 2024 and $3 million in 2023. In the third year of full-scale invasion, caution's assessment and forecast of Ukrainian business understandable. Uncertainty breeds insecurity, but despite this, the fact that the majority of local business still expects growth adds optimism. That brings me to the main point, the important resource that will be available very soon to all of you and is being prepared right now, and the contribution from this event will be added, the new definitive investment guide to Ukraine. This will be more than just a collection of facts and figures. The guide will reflect on Ukraine's resilience, on Ukraine's forward-thinking strategy. It will include information on government and policy, incentives for investors, war risk insurance, and other important factors for business environment. Contribution from this discussion will also be added to the guide. To complete the picture regarding Ukrainian investment landscape, let me bring to your attention Invest Portal UA. This portal was presented last week by Ukrainian Ministry of Economy. It has 95 investment opportunities which are already ready, which are already online, and all investors who are interested can look at them. They are from 8 economic sector with total financing potential of 26 US billion. And they are from all Ukrainian regions. These projects were selected and prepared by my team, by other big consulting and audit companies, and on behalf of Ministry of Economy of Ukraine. So you can go to the site and already see what Ukraine can offer in terms of big investment projects. Ukraine is a turning point, and it's not only the story of war and bravery, it is a story of resilience, innovation, and opportunity. Rebuilding process is a strategic investment prospect. So I would also like to take a moment and to say thank you to all US investors who already invest in Ukraine. We are really deeply grateful and appreciate that you are continuing doing so. Thank you. And Ukraine is open for business. Invest in Ukraine now. Thank you.
We're going to have a slight change in our schedule. The Honorable Olga Baleko is a little bit late, and so we're just going to change some things around. And I'm looking forward to your meeting her, to introducing her, and also to be able to introduce you to an extraordinary individual, Les Myers. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take up now the construction of the first smart city for Ukraine with the Western support of SWECO. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the dissection of how a major project from the conception to the financing to the execution can take place. And I'm delighted that we have Henry, and we're also going to have with us Neil Cawley, who has been working very closely with him, an American living up in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So here we go. Thank you.
Well, I'm back, and great to, again, I know everybody's getting rusty, using the restroom, getting the conversations going, which is great. So today, this is a project we're about to share with you, with my partner, and this particular project is the, let's put it this way, this is the project that we believe is going to become a model for the rest of the country, and players that are being involved in this particular projects are so incredibly good at what they do, especially the one we're going to speak about, specifically a company called SWECO. So can you load up my presentation, please? Nastya? So, so let me give you a little bit background. In the early days, November 2022, we had met with representative of this company in Warsaw on the first Rebuild conference for Ukraine. That was, as I mentioned earlier, November 2022. This relationship evolved. And before we start the presentation, I speak to a lot of mayors, a lot of business people in Ukraine. And especially in the, obviously in the Western world, a lot of people know it takes a lot of time to get any deal done. So if you and I just met today, it will take us 6 months minimum to bring something to reality. And that's in the good scenario. So when people ask me why now, this is the biggest question we need to answer. Why now? Why Ukraine and why us? And in this presentation, you're about to see what model we are building. The good example, as you're going to hear my partner Neil Cawley talk about it, our organization, our company was actually legally formed only in November 2023. We're a startup. Yes, we're a global startup. We're getting attention from the top government officials around the world, but yet we're a startup. And in order for the startup to work, we need to have players, not only for us, but for Ukraine, who've been there, have done that, who have financial credibility, the know-how on the management, and obviously the technology. So I'm introducing you SWECO. SWECO, as you're going to see, is a company that is allowing us to really start laying the foundation, the first layer, the most critical layer of infrastructure, of industrial base of Ukraine. That's the opportunity we all have, an opportunity to build the ground up, smart manufacturing, connecting logistics from Crimea all the way to Western Ukraine. Think about that. Think about all new technologies that we can bring to Ukraine and making sure the value add stays in Ukraine and makes it more affordable for the rest of the world, whatever that value add is. So as we're moving forward, I want to stress with you about our municipality network. We have built a municipality network and we keep growing it all across the country, Ukraine. It allows us to engage at the lowest level, and Steve, as you pointed out, we're actually planning to certify and accredit municipalities and businesses at minimum of 15 categories, from anti-corruption to sustainability to everything else. One of our business units is Academy, the chairman you recently met with, is going to be delivering this content from all around the world. Why? Because in order for our country, not only to get investment, to become a member of European Union, all the industries, all the professions must be on the European standards. And this is what we're building now. If you look at what we have now on the numbers, we already have signed 22 economic unions representing 146 municipalities, over 2.5 million people already. And we are only coming out now publicly with what we do. That number is about to grow. And our core focus right now is to make sure that we bring enough partners, international partners, to make sure that infrastructure we're building can basically be 2 + 2 = 5. That's the ultimate goal. Basically amplify all the good things we know around the world. So now coming back, and before I introduce my partner Neil, is going to talk about SWECO as a whole. Thank you, Neil.
Good day, everyone. My name is Cornelius Cawley, and on behalf of myself and Economy of Trust Ukraine, I just want to give thanks to all of you for appearing today, to come so far to this historic event. What Henry and I and our whole team have learned over the past 8-9 months are two important lessons. First, that a top-down approach will not work when it comes to revitalizing Ukraine. You hear a lot of talk about revitalizing Ukraine, but unfortunately much of it is cast in this top-down model. We recognize that true revitalization and redevelopment will occur from the ground up through our municipality network and through initiatives such as that. Secondly, decentralization has provided the localities of Ukraine with enormous authority and an equally enormous responsibility to create jobs. And so that's where our focus is. So you see here today now a slide from SWECO. To borrow an American sports analogy, SWECO is the New York Yankees of design and architecture. Based in Finland, they have 23,000 architects, engineers, and experts. Their reach is global, as far away as China and Iraq. They have 150,000 projects under their belt. Their experience and expertise are truly unrivaled. Their focus is limited to developing buildings and urban landscapes, designing water, energy, and industrial solutions. They have also worked on massive transportation infrastructure projects around the world. Building development and urban revitalization, water, energy, and industrial development, infrastructure, and transportation. These are precisely the areas that Ukraine will be focusing on in the coming years. And we are proud to announce today that we are entering into a joint venture with SWECO to create not 1, not 2, not 10, but 100 industrial parks across Ukraine. SWECO's Finland origins go back 135 years. That's a lot of institutional know-how. Throughout history, they have been called upon to work on transformational projects. And today they are courageously joining us in the creation of Ukraine 2.0, an industrialized nation with state-of-the-art smart technology at its base, a one-of-a-kind game changer for the global economy. It is also worth noting, and SWECO has specifically asked us today to let all of you know that as a company formed in Finland, they know all too well what it is like to be subject to Russian aggression. And that is what, in large part, has motivated their willingness and their courageous decision to partner with us. Aside from the business aspects of our joint venture, SWECO is firmly committed to doing what it takes to help Ukraine become a global business destination. And speaking of Finland, here you can see the important role that industrial construction plays in development. After World War II, Finland set about engaging in industrialized construction as opposed to traditional construction. In 1950, industrialized construction was non-existent. By 1990, 80% of construction in Finland had become industrial. Correspondingly, as you can also see in the accompanying graph, that has led to an increase in industrial development well above 2,000%. Finland's past can be Ukraine's future. And here we see SWECO's expertise at work. Starting in 2012, SWECO began working on a massive industrial post-war project in the Iraq city of Bismillah. This was a $10 billion project consisting of 1,750 buildings, 140,000 square feet each, to accommodate 600,000 people. This is development on a massive scale. This is what SWECO is all about. SWECO has what it takes to help shape Ukraine's industrial future. And now, back to Henry.
Thank you. And right now, the reason we are here today, because we already have, even today, this morning, I'm already being approached by many CEOs of many companies. And David, stand up for 1 second. I just want to point out, David is a CEO of a very big IoT company using AI, which we want to bring into Ukraine. And I want to use this example. SWECO, thank you, David. I know you'll speak tomorrow. Everybody will learn about Vantik. But I want to stress one thing. Our model. Company like SWECO spent months during the war on water, waste, as well as energy. And they have chosen to go with us across Ukraine. Why? Because what we do is allowing us to really transform from the old way of doing things to the new way of doing things. And what you see here is the old economy in terms of how the sustainability works, circularity of it, which allows us now to transform our country, right, from literally, as Neil pointed out, through municipal network, ground up. SWECO, as a $2.2 billion conglomerate worldwide, allows now to bring all of their resources to Ukraine, but not to Ukraine as a whole, to your individual municipalities. And so we're going to bring a lot of American companies, from technology to construction, that will allow us to do this. This is an example of what in Finland they have built, a fully circular, sustainable industrial park. Remember, James, we're going to have an address by BlackRock, Vice President, I believe, later today. Money, first and foremost, demand sustainability. Money. Money demands circular economy. Money demands green energy. Money will not come to Ukraine without those things being checked off. And that starts where? It starts with municipality. And I wanted to, coming up, for you to see the digital tools we're building that will allow us to really zoom in and create a virtual reality of the future of Ukrainian cities. We call this, very simply, metaverse in reverse, where we're actually going to imagine the future and tie it in legally to the piece of land, which will drive transparency to the next level. Why? Because when I get a legal permit to construct, it's immediately sealed all around the world. When I made a first sale of that apartment, when I made the first rental, when I made whatever, you'll be able to see it in the metaverse. Technology allows us to do this. We just have to reimagine it, use it in a different way. And Ukraine is a beautiful opportunity to demonstrate the power of those technologies. David, are you with me? How? Yes? Right? So this is what we want to do. We want to bring American companies across all industries in order to participate in not Marshall Plan, but Marshall Plan on steroids. Remember, $1 trillion will be coming into Ukraine. $1 trillion. So to finish it up, this is industrial park. We have to realize one thing as investors. No company will come into Ukraine to produce anything, whatever that is, without being a resident of industrial park. Why? Because it would be stupid financially not to be the resident of industrial park due to the benefits already allocated by the law of Ukraine. And I want to thank my partner Neil for not only presenting today, but stepping up, never been to Ukraine. He met me 2 years ago. He did not have gray hair back then. And now we are at the point where we're executing a vision for the whole country together. So I hope that you will join us, because this model, with people sitting in this room from Ukraine, from America, from other countries, we can get it done. That's all we're after. So thank you so much. Neil, last word to you.
Thank you, Henry. We do have some literature on this. You can take photos of our contact information. We have prepared a one-sheet that was out in the lobby in the coffee area that says 100 industrial parks for Ukraine. That will give you the information that you need. Feel free to get in touch with us. We're very excited about this opportunity. And thank you all, and thank you to Jim. Thank you, Jim. Oh,
present from Ukraine. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have the last speakers in just a minute here, 2 minutes actually, and that is the justice from the Supreme Court in Ukraine, and we're going to have Les join us, and we'll please. In fact, if you'd like to go up and begin to just share a little bit of your thoughts before she comes, and then you can have a dialogue with her.
We're still set at 20 minutes, right? No, but 20 in total. Right. Thank you very much, Jim. My name is Les Myers, and I'm the founding director of the Center for Professional Ethics at Marymount University, which is a learning community here in the Washington, D.C. area. And I'm very grateful to be with you here this morning. I want to thank Jim for his role in convening this very important gathering. The very work of doing this itself is an example of ethical leadership, and we're very grateful for that. And I'm looking forward to the conversation with the judge from the Supreme Court. I should mention just and first of all, my background is in accounting, law, and philosophical ethics. So I think in at least some of those areas, there's some overlap with the background of the judge. I also should say from the perspective of local government, I'm in my 9th year as a senior advisor for the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County, which is one of our local jurisdictions here in the Washington area. So I have a fair amount of experience looking at things from the perspective of local government when it comes to efficiencies and oversight and questions of ethics and compliance. Just as at the outset, one of the things I wanted to mention, certainly from the perspective of ethics and law, the perspective that I would take in these conversations, especially when we're dealing with friends who are from other cultures, is that these, just to echo the excellent words of Bill Novelli earlier, these are things that we struggle with too. So the issue is not so much US versus Ukraine or any other culture, but rather we struggle with questions of organizational integrity and responsibility. Indeed, from the legal side, when we think about the preamble to our own Constitution in the United States, we don't say we're a perfect union, but we say that we're trying to form a more perfect union. And from the outset, in the very first words that we use to describe our political community, we talk about it as a journey where we're incrementally trying to improve ourselves. And so when we talk about ethics and compliance, whether at the organizational level or certainly at the societal level, we're talking about things that we learn about ourselves and trying to improve ourselves. So those would be preliminary comments. Do we have a sense of her progress? Or? Still waiting. So she. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. So, well, yeah. Well, the good thing about being a judge on the Supreme Court is you're never late. So whatever it is, it's going to be important that she's working on. So whatever you think would be appropriate, Jim. If you would like, we could certainly defer, or if there's another session you'd like to do, I'm totally open. Or take a break? That sounds great.
Enjoy the lunch, enjoy the conversations. We'll see you here at 1 o'clock.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.